After the sounds of rumbling stones ceased, a small light sparked in the darkness as Itamad relit his lantern. With some of the party still retching from a truly fetid odor, they wondered at the source, though the foreman confirmed it was no mine gas he had ever encountered. Since the tunnel they had come through was completely caved in, the four searched the cavern looking for another exit, though Itamad informed them the workers had found no other passages from this chamber. Finding no way out of their current predicament, they settled down to take stock of their dire circumstances and determine what resources they had. With their limited rations, Itamad estimated they had perhaps a fortnight before they would perish.
Hours passed, then days, though how many no one could count. In the oppressive gloom, they waited. Akash attempted to fill the vast emptiness with hopeful conversation, though as time passed, his companions found it increasingly difficult to share his apparently unshakable optimism. When Akash insisted they had survived dangerous situations before and affirmed his belief that the captain would find a way to save them, Mezi questioned how he could be so certain, contending that they had never been in such dire straits, or so powerless. Kasumi's only contribution to the conversation was an admission that he had killed them all. As time passed, Sarai's words replayed over and over in Mezi's head. She began to wonder, had she listened to her instincts sooner, could she have prevented this situation? Her mind raced until she was struck by the realization that while Itamad had uttered prayers and left offerings upon entering the mine, Akash had not. It seemed unlikely to her that this possibility had occurred to him, given his hopeful outlook. Despite how fearless Sitara was normally in the face of certain danger, Mezi recalled her trepidation about entering the collapsing mine. While Mezi did not think Sitara would abandon them, her pragmatism did not allow her to embrace Akash's unfaltering confidence in their captain.
Kasumi knew that this was all his fault. "I've killed us all," he thought dejectedly. Akash seemed to be sure that Sitara would come and save them, but Kasumi knew better. This was the end. For once, Kasumi realized that he was a blight on everyone he'd ever known, and despite every chance given to him, he still managed to ruin other people's lives. The one thought that had always stuck with him is that he never forced anyone to do anything, always gave people an out. But Kasumi had to face facts. He had used his friends on more than one occasion, with little regard for their well-being. In Jinla, he needn't have involved the crew in the Yamuchi raid, but did so under the false pretense of helping the winery. In Vargerstad, Mezi nearly died fighting a bear just to sate Kasumi's own destructive curiosity. And now he had finally done it. In one fell swoop, he would kill himself, Mezi, Akash, and the foreman, simply because he was so confident in himself and hadn't bothered to prepare. I have to tell them. I have to let them know what I've done. Kasumi kept repeating this in his head, and resolved that if they escaped the cave, he would tell them the truth.
Mezi opened her eyes to utter darkness. She thought she had heard something, but she had been drifting in and out of consciousness, and was not entirely sure she was even awake now. She had not heard a word from the others in what felt like ages, though she could not say for how long. She was unable to drag herself to them to check their breathing, much less summon the strength to investigate whatever noise her mind had convinced her she had heard. There it was again. She tried to command her body to move, though she felt impossibly heavy. Still unsure of whether she was dreaming or already dead, Mezzy thought she may have managed to inch towards it. Distant and muffled, she could have sworn she heard voices before she felt herself slipping away.
The morning after Cash and the others had ventured once more into the tunnels, his miners broke their fast and prepared for the day's work. Calls rang out around the camp as the workers began to realize that Akash and Itamad were nowhere to be found, and Satara soon discovered that no one had seen them return from the mine. One of the work crew managers, Bahij, quickly organized a search. Realizing that her friends might be trapped underground, or worse, buried alive, Satara rallied the rest of her crew and offered what aid they could. One of the search parties finally discovered a section of collapsed tunnel deep within the mine. Wasting no time, the miners set to work on clearing the rubble, while Satara stationed members of her crew to help keep watch. Bahij guessed they had perhaps a fortnight, at best, to free the trapped souls before they would perish from starvation and thirst. On the sixth night, Satara went to check on the progress of the cave-in. Quelling her deep-seated dread, she descended into the mine. As she neared the collapsed tunnel, she heard shouts and a deep rumble of stone. Against every instinct, she sprinted forward through the passages until she was met with a noxious odor and a pair of workers vomiting outside a fresh collapse. Forcing back bile, she tied a scarf around her face and plunged into the dust to find another worker retching and a pair of partially buried forms. The first man she pulled from the rubble was bruised, cut, and dazed, while the second she soon realized was Emrys, unconscious and badly injured. Carrying the men clear of the dust and stench, Satara sounded the alarm. After taking the wounded to Diallo, Satara and Bahij set the workers to removing the new rubble and clearing out the noxious fumes from the tunnel, with the help of Kanuki and the blacksmith Shakir. Once the ill workers had recovered, Satara asked each of them what happened before the cave-in. The two near the tunnel entrance recalled nothing strange other than the fumes accompanying the collapse, which they were certain was not normal mine gas. The pair closest to the cave-in remembered that Emrys heard a noise, and when he went to investigate, the supports gave way. Having taken a severe blow to the head, it took some time before Emrys regained consciousness, and his memory of the incident was vague. Though he recalled someone mentioning a noise before the collapse, he remembered nothing of what followed. Perturbed by these stories, as well as Emrys's injuries, she warned Diallo to keep a close watch over him and the others. As the mining crews dug out enough of the rubble to recover the supports, Satara fetched Vendela. The carpenter, who had helped build and inspected the supports herself, showed her where the joints had been weakened, concluding that someone or something had damaged them prior to the collapse. Deeply disturbed, Satara spoke quietly with Jian and Mehdi, ensuring one of the three of them would be present at all times to continue their watch over the operation. 3 days after the last collapse, the work crews finished excavating the first section of the tunnel off the main branch. They broke into an open area only to find the tunnel beyond had also collapsed, though not as entirely. With Akash, Kasumi, Mezzy, and Itamad having been trapped for a week and a half now, time was running out, and they began excavating the next section with great urgency. Late on the 14th night of the rescue operation, Bahij was insisting they were almost through when the miners were hit by another blast of noxious fumes. Prepared with scented scarves from Satara and medicine to calm the stomach supplied by Diallo, the men pushed through. Clearing the rubble from the top of the shaft, they saw only darkness beyond. Kanuki pushed his way to the fore and began throwing rocks aside to clear the passage. Reaching a giant arm through, he pulled the unconscious form of Mezzy through the gap. After one of the men crawled through the opening, he shouted back that Akash was just on the other side, unconscious, but alive. With more of the passageway cleared, the miners scattered into the cave beyond to recover the comatose bodies of Kasumi and Itamad, and rushed all four to the surface. Diallo immediately began treatment, reassuring everyone that they should survive, though they would remain weak for quite some time. After a few days, the 4 survivors awoke to a crowd gathered round, greeting them with cheers, water skins, and small bits of food. Speaking with each of them, an oddly reticent Sitara assured them that they would speak further once they had regained some of their strength, before taking a seat by one of the cots nearby. Looking over, they saw the heavily bandaged form of Emrys, and overheard a brief exchange between the captain and Diallo, revealing he was still not fully recovered from his head injury.
Over the course of the next several days, each of the recovering crew members made progress towards being up and about. With some assistance, Akash made an effort to be seen amongst his workers, while Mezi found solace outside camp. Kasumi kept mostly to himself, brooding over the events of the past weeks. Once the crew reconvened, there was some debate as to the possible reasons for the mine collapses. Mezi argued that perhaps the cave-in that trapped him was the result of Akash neglecting to make the same prayers and offerings as his workers at the tunnel crossings before they entered.
Akash admitted to having something of a contentious relationship with the priest of Rakosis, who seemed to feel his offerings to the Jinn were not befitting for one of his station. To the incredulousness of the party, Akash affirmed that he did not feel the priests were sharing all they knew of the Jinn, and should not be respected above other men. Glancing uneasily toward Akash's foreman, Sitara switched to Owami, contending that there was no reason to distrust the divine sages. To lack faith in those to whom the dreamer entrusted her secrets was to lack faith in her judgment. Kasumi suggested the party take the conversation outside camp in order to keep from upsetting Akash's workers who, the party realized, would be none too pleased to hear their employer did not think highly of the priests, or perhaps made insufficient offerings to the Jinn.
Retreating to a clearing outside of the camp, Akash and Kasumi revealed that they were members of a secretive brotherhood who had used the party for their own ends. The Brotherhood involvement in the events in Jinla, and the party's unknowing part in determining its outcome, did not go over well with Sitara and Mezi. Even the fight in Rakosis at the Smoking Cloud, they revealed, was but a play by a member of the Brotherhood to ruin the owner, who had annoyed them. Sitara questioned why they, a successful businessman and educated accountant, were a part of such a criminal organization. Kasumi answered, both sincerely and with a hint of shame, that he had joined the Brotherhood out of boredom. Akash revealed he was mainly involved because, as a street urchin, he had grown up amongst those connected with it. To him, they were his family. He admitted that he would see the Brotherhood changed into something of legitimate organization that could be put to use against the worst criminal elements of the cities in which it maintained a presence.
Having come clean, the conversation turned back to the significance of the mine collapses. Eventually, Akash concluded that, given his prior struggles with empathy, this must be a test of the Jinn, for him to learn the lessons of loss, responsibility, and humility. As they set off to return to camp, Sitara shared her concerns over inconsistencies in reports about the last cave-in. Speaking with Emrys once more, he confirmed that, before the collapse, the others had asked him if he heard something. This contradicted the statements of the miners involved, who had indicated Emrys was the one to voice concern over a noise in the tunnel. The party elected to pursue this, with Akash as bait. The next day, Akash let it be known that he meant to return to the mine to commune with the Jinn of the earth. Sitara, Jian, and Mezi went ahead to lay in wait in the side tunnels. On the way, they heard a soft tune from the woods outside of camp. Taking a short detour, they discovered that Emrys, still heavily bandaged, had snuck out with his loot for some fresh air. Upon hearing their plan, he assured them that they would prevail, and the 3 women continued along their way to take up their positions inside the mine. In the dark, they waited with bated breath, straining their eyes and ears. Finally, Sitar heard a quiet shuffling and touched Jian's arm to alert her. She could barely make out a form moving in the darkness ahead. She was softly approaching the figure when suddenly she felt the sting of a blade in her back. A melee ensued in the near pitch black of the tunnel as Jian went to assist the captain, who had been ambushed by a second figure from behind, then a third. Mezzi, following the sounds of the scuffle, soon joined in the fray until it was interrupted by a cracking sound, followed by a noxious cloud and a flash of blinding light. Recovering quickly, Sitara saw the saboteurs sprinting for the entrance, but stopped to check on Jian before giving chase. Seeing 3 men bolt from the mine entrance, Kasumi, Kanuki, and Midi quickly raced to catch them. The saboteurs split paths, making a break for the hills above the mine. The party, in hot pursuit, first came upon Emrys, who, in his attempt to stop the miscreants, had taken another beating, along with his instrument. As the party fell behind their quarry, Sitara begged the dreamer for guidance. Casting her gaze to the heavens, she caught sight of something bright streaking across the sky and into the hills.
After a harrowing chase deep into the hills, they eventually lost sight of the saboteurs. Coming upon an impassable ravine, they finally decided to turn back, though they kept hunting for any signs of the escaped men. Kasumi managed to locate a hidden camp in the hills that appeared recently plundered, with a small chest emptied and thrown aside. Though the rest of the party returned to camp to recover from the ordeal, Kasumi stayed behind to comb over every inch of the hidden base. After many excruciating hours, his diligence paid off, somewhat, as he returned to the mine with a sliver of parchment, seemingly the torn corner of a larger document. Several lines were drawn on it, which did not seem to match symbols from any language, and were in all likelihood part of a crest or insignia. It wasn't much, but Kasumi was convinced he would discover the assailants, no matter how long it took. While the party could not muster up the same enthusiasm as Kasumi, they put the word out about the escaped men, sending messages to nearby mines and drawing up wanted posters. They set bounties for the saboteurs, who they confirmed had all been a part of the newest group of recruits to the mines. With the situation at the mine in hand, and the party recovering, they decided to return to Rakosis. Taking a few days to prepare, on the 20th of the 6th moon, they began the long overland trip, west on the mountain road, then south along the coastal road back to the City of Sails.